Dallas Cowboys cornerback Trevon Diggs is out for the season, but the pages turn quickly in the NFL, and now it is time to ask, what now? So tonight we'll react to the injury, but also dive into what the plan is for the Cowboys moving forward and why, honestly, it's pretty crystal clear. Here we go. What is up, everyone, and welcome into A to Z Sports Dallas Prime Time. I am your host, Mauricio Rodriguez, streaming with you live every Sunday through Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central here on Dallas On Demand Sports Talk Network. With a lot more content coming your way, make sure that you check out a2zsports.com/Dallas. And as always, remember to hit the like button here on the show because it helps us put the show in front of more and more Cowboys fans. So I thank you for smashing that thumbs up. Big day for the Cowboys, man. Big day. Not necessarily a good one. It started off great. It really did. Thursday injury report was shaping up to be one of the best ones that we've had almost 3 weeks into the season. Donovan Wilson, back-to-back full participations in practice. That sounded great. I know that I wrote an article talking about how the defense was about to get a big boost. Wilson back in the lineup could be huge. Tyler Smith, limited participant, maybe trending in the right direction. Zach Martin expected to play. Brandon Cooks practicing for the second consecutive day. It sounded great until it didn't. Until reporters were out on Twitter saying, whoops, we just saw Trevon Diggs in crutches. Gets an MRI. Moments later, it is confirmed Trevon Diggs tore his ACL during a one-on-one period in practice, according to Dallas Morning News. Michael Gelkin and David Moore were reporting these details earlier today. And yeah, Trevon Diggs out for the year. Ouch. That was one way to bring the Cowboys Nation fan base that was riding so high after a 40-0 win in week 1, a 30-10 win in week 2, and now this huge blow to the Cowboys defense. And man, I've seen all sorts of reactions less than a day into the news, right? I've seen people go, the Cowboys season is over, which is ridiculous. It's not. Take that idea, crumble it up, and throw it on the garbage can because that would make no sense. That would be a nonsensical thing to say about the 2023 Cowboys. Now, I've seen people say, oh, they're not going to skip a beat. That would also be pretty crazy to say about an all-pro cornerback that is literally one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL right now. That would make no sense at all. The truth is somewhere in between. But overall, it is pretty sucky news. Initial reaction, of course, it sucks, man. You got to make it about the feeling instead of everything else. It felt bad. It felt like a punch to the gut where you are riding high with the best defense in the NFL. There's pretty much no debate, even in the national landscape, that the Cowboys have the best defense. And in big part, yes, that's because of Micah Parsons and what they do up front with the way that they design pressures, with the way that they get to the QB. They've been stopping the run, but it's all tied together, right? You stop the run because you can trust your secondary that they'll get the job done. You can play with heavy boxes. You're not concerned about what's going on the boundary. So it all ties together. You cannot say that Trevon Diggs' injury won't be a big deal for the Cowboys. That being said, when you talk about the Cowboys being such a deep group of players on offense and on defense, you can pretend that the season is over when one player goes down. There might be a number of players that could really deviate the course of a season. I'm going to say Dak Prescott would be one of them because he is a quarterback. Heck, even Micah Parsons could be another one of them since he is an edge rusher and such a valuable one. But it's not over. It's not over at all with Trevon Diggs' injury. Does it suck that he's out? Yes. Does it suck from a football perspective where you know that the Cowboys are going to have to adjust? Of course. Do you know that the Cowboys are objectively going to go down a notch in terms of how they play at cornerback? Of course. But Does it suck for Trevon Diggs personally and what it means for him as a human being? Of course it does. Doesn't mean that the Cowboys are going to stop being one of the best defenses in the league. It's as simple as that. Weren't they one of the best defenses in the league with Anthony Brown in the lineup last year? And I'm not even knocking Anthony Brown, by the way. I'm just saying you don't have to have Stefan Gilmore and Trevon Diggs on your defense to be one of the best pass defenses in the league. It sure as heck helps. And that's why we were so excited about this duo of guys. And maybe if the other outside corner that's not Trevon Diggs was Anthony Brown still, yeah, maybe it could be a much bigger deal. Of course, when the Cowboys did bring Stefan Gilmore via a trade, the thing that the Cowboys were envisioning as a front office was for Diggs and Gilmore to play next to each other, each on one side, as outside cornerbacks of the team. But it's a reminder of how important acquiring Gilmore was in the first place. Because if he wasn't around and you had, like, I don't know, a first round rookie, even a second round rookie, something like that, taking the plays next to Anthony Brown or something like that, of course it would be something to be concerned about. But now you take a all-pro cornerback, and what do you have left? Another all-pro cornerback that's been a defensive player of the year and that is looking quite well, even though he is in a latter stage of his career. But Stephon Gilmore is going to be a good cornerback one for Dallas. Now, they have a deep group of playmakers at cornerback, and people maybe immediately thought of free agents, potential trade targets ahead of the deadline before week 8, and maybe people's heads started spinning, thinking about outside options. The Cowboys' plan to replace Trevon Diggs couldn't be any clearer. And I say this because we talked about it before the season even began, when we were realizing how the roster could shape out and how they could make some tough decisions at cornerback. We talked a lot about Jordan Lewis. We talked about the importance of sticking with Jordan Lewis. And one of the things that we said throughout that entire process was how if somebody goes down, anybody, the plays that you needed depth in was nickel. Because if one of the outside guys, because obviously if Daron Bland went down, you needed somebody to take over his position at nickel. But if one of the outside guys went down, Trevon or Gilmore, then you still needed a nickel cornerback because Bland was always going to kick outside. And that's exactly what's going to happen for Dallas after the Trevon Diggs injury. The plan to replace Trevon Diggs is not to sign somebody else, not to trade for somebody. It's to kick Daron Bland, who has played at a very high level since he surprisingly debuted as a rookie last year when Jordan Lewis himself went down in the Lions game. And I say debuted as a starter is what I mean. Obviously, he was already playing by then. But Bland is going to take over on the outside. Gilmore is going to play on the opposite side. And then Jordan Lewis enters the picture at nickel. And this is where we go back to August when we were talking about, do you have Jordan Lewis start on PUP or do you have him as a member of the 53-man roster? This was always the right call because you need a veteran guy in terms of depth who can step in, know the system. He played very well for Dallas when he was starting at nickel, and provided that he is healthy and he is somewhat close to being the same player that he was before the nasty foot injury that he suffered in 2022, the Cowboys should be fine. That is a solid secondary still. Cornerback, you would have, again, Bland and Gilmore on the outside with Jordan Lewis on the inside. Maybe we kind of forget about this sometimes, but last year before Jordan Lewis was injured, he was top 7 in the league in yards per snap in the slot coverage. So targeted times, like yards per target in from the slot. Sorry for getting that mixed up a little bit there. But the Cowboys should be fine in this area moving forward. Not great. I understand. And I'm not going to pretend otherwise. You absolutely want Trevon Diggs to be a part of this team. And it is going to hurt the Cowboys to not have him around. Anyways, now that I've gone on my opening rant of this show, and before we keep diving into some of these details and what it could mean for the depth at the position and where does Israel Mukwamu fit in, what does it mean for the linebackers, does Noah Igbinogin have anything to do with this story or not? Let me read some of your comments. Let me say hi. Let's get through this difficult day together, if that makes sense. By the way, do me a favor and hit the like button for me, because every like puts this show in front of more and more Cowboys fans. And I really appreciate you taking the time to hit the thumbs up. It takes about half a second to do so. And that is the single biggest thing that you can do to help out. Let's see here. Sean says, I got to go to work. No, got to go to work. Excuse me. These blows, but we're good. Last year, it would have been absolutely devastating. We have depth now. Next man up. Man, the Gilmore acquisition really, really feels much more important today than it did yesterday. Because yesterday it was like a luxury. You had Stefan Gilmore. We're great. That is an insane cornerback group. But now, well, we still have Gilmore, which is good. He's a good number one cornerback, and we can survive with him. Whereas last year, I agree with Sean, maybe it would have been a tough situation where you're like, damn, now NFL teams have a weak spot where they can really target us and keep attacking us at. Because again, as I think it was on this show maybe a couple of days ago, when we were talking about how Anthony Brown maybe wasn't as bad as many people made him out to be, but he was definitely the weak spot that NFL teams came in trying to target. NFL teams, game started, and you knew that at one point they were going to target Anthony Brown on the outside. And usually it would be when they had that one-on-one so they could beat him deep. Now, I'm not sure that the Cowboys are going to have that. Maybe teams are going to have a preference. Maybe some teams are going to want to attack Jordan Lewis. Maybe some teams are going to want to attack Daron Bland. But it's not going to be the same as with Anthony Brown, where it was, he's the guy. He is the guy that we're going after. I don't think. I don't think that that's going to be the case. Let's see here. Danny Savage says, Diggs, good. He got paid first. It did cross my mind. I agree. You feel good about the players when they have injuries like this, when they're taken care of. And Trevon Diggs with a $97 million deal, 5 years. It's going to be okay, I guess. Let's see here. Some people are built different. Sestino. Philip says, I have 100% confidence in this defense. Everyone on both sides of the ball needs to go up their game and rally up for Diggs. Time to dig in, says Philip. And now keep in mind that it's going to help Bland. It's going to help Gilmore. It's going to help Lewis. The fact that you do have the league's best pass rush, because you do. Micah Parsons getting after the QB, playing and play out is going to help. And the same for Oza and D-Law, because they're going to continue to get that pressure even without Trevon. I know that we're saying that it's all tied together, but it doesn't mean that because Trevon isn't around anymore, then the Cowboys are not going to be able to get to the QB. Of course, that's not the case. They are going to still get to the QB. It might change how you go about it here and there in certain specific spots. Maybe the way that you design pressures is different because they are not independent things. Whatever you do pressure-wise needs to be tied together with whatever you're doing in the back end. So maybe you change the way that you go about things, but it's going to work. And hey, Dan Quinn sure as heck has earned our trust in that way. And TC915 actually touches on this in the comments. He says, having Dan Quinn can neutralize a loss like this. Let's see here. Pale Moon says there is still the trade deadline to get someone else if we need to. And this could be a good plan B in case things don't work out for the Cowboys as they wanted to. But I really do not believe that it's a likely outcome to this. Barring any other injuries, of course. But yeah, I don't know if the Cowboys are really going to be looking for outside help. But Pale Moon is definitely right, saying like, hey, there is still time. So If the Cowboys don't like what they see over the next few weeks, could that be in play? Absolutely. When the stakes are this high, everything is going to be in play if things do not work out the way that they want to. Toxic Tom says way more concerned about who plays center on Sunday, and we're going to get to that in a moment here because it is a valid concern, I think. Guru says some players are made differently than others. Some quick recover, some have slow recovery. Tina Santiago says back in the days, Rod Woodson tore his ACL and came back in 6 months. And it sure sounds like the Cowboys are not going to be hoping for any crazy recovery for Trevon Diggs because they did announce that it's a season ending injury and you have to designate the players to return when they go to injured reserve. And it doesn't sound like that will be the case. So don't expect Trevon to make a miraculous comeback in the playoffs or anything like that because that's not happening. That's not happening. Bright side, Trevon should be ready to go by maybe training camp of next year, like without being rushed. That could be a good side of this storyline if there is one. But let's go beyond here, the starting lineup. And I'm going to say, too, we haven't talked about the safeties. Having an elite group of safeties also helps because it can also mean that you're playing around with your personnel groupings. You can have the three safeties that are flying around the middle of the field. So if Lewis gets burned here and there, you've got a group of players that really rally to the football every single snap. And having Kears, Wilson, and Hooker in the secondary helps because, it's fewer weak spots across your entire secondary. And maybe we won't talk too much about it because we're talking about corners and safety is a different position. But secondary wise, this unit is still honestly one of the best in the NFL. Like maybe they lose ranking because you lost Trevon Diggs, who is an absolute dog, but you're going to be fine in the secondary, I guess, if you are the Cowboys. And Sergio says, Bland is a slot corner. He gets lots of picks from that position. But let's not get it twisted here. Bland has been a slot cornerback for the Cowboys. He's also played on the outside, and he's done it pretty well too. So, although Bland maybe is not going to be at his best on the outside, it's not like he's going to have to learn how to play on the outside because he's got the size, he's got the traits to survive in that world. So I'm not worried about Bland making that transition. Maybe I'm worried in the sense that, hey, he's going to see some stuff that maybe he hasn't lived with in his NFL life because maybe it's a different position. I do think that like nickelback, we sometimes think that, it's just another alignment for the cornerback, but you're talking about playing nickelback is honestly one of the toughest positions in the sport because you got to be physical because you're near the box, but you also need to get the speed to defend the seam and do all kind of crazy stuff. The receiver can break outside, inside, and of course you can do that everywhere, but not really. If you're on the outside, you're not going to do a whole lot of crazy stuff. It's more of a limited route options, right? So playing nickel is pretty tough. I think you could argue even that going to the outside obviously has its difficulties, but I would assume moving to the inside sometimes can be a little bit more difficult. So yeah, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. In that sense, I think that Bland is gonna be okay, specifically on the outside. 5-time champ 74 going on 6 says corner was a problem last year. This is going to hurt. It is going to hurt. There's no other way of putting it. I do want to come back to the fact that last year, Stefan Gilmore was not on the Cowboys roster. I think that's where you start with this conversation. We're focusing on Bland because he's the one that's going to be changing positions, and Lewis is going to be the new quote unquote face in the lineup. But Gilmore is the difference here. Gilmore being on the team is what makes this something that the Cowboys can survive. 100%. I do wonder though, and I just this might be more of a matchup specific thing, but I wonder if this makes the Cowboys think about playing more man to man and getting to those situations where they want to shadow somebody with Gilmore. Might be the case. Not entirely sure though what their plan is going to be there, but that's just a question that popped into my mind at some point today. Where I was, you want to know how my day went? I had said in my house that I was buying. I was buying food today. It was on me. I was on the drive-through, waiting on the drive-through because the line was super long, typing at my keyboard, like because I had my computer with me because I knew that the MRI was happening by then. The results hadn't come back. While I was ordering my food, news drops that hey, it is confirmed. And there I am, just pissed at my piss through at my piss through at the drive-through. Words got mixed up there. Just writing up the articles for A to Z Sports, all pissed off and just in a bad mood. What's your order? Danny Savage says. You guys are gonna laugh at me if I tell you what my order was, because it was a burger place, but I had to have my chicken stars, man. I had to have my chicken nuggets and that honey mustard. Yup, I had to. I had to. Anyways, moving on from that weird parenthesis. I don't even remember how we got there. But yeah. Hurts most versus Phyllis is Danny Savage. I remember how we got there. I was thinking about the question that popped into my mind. Not boneless wings. Nah, nah, nah. Says Toxic Tom. Nah, not boneless wings. Chicken stars are different than boneless wings. Let me say that right now. Different foods. Anyways, I have played both, and playing nickel corner is pretty hard, says Jason. Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, Bill Parcells calls it the most difficult position in the sport, and he isn't alone. Mark Aaron says, did you eat the nuggies with Andy Reid? You have no idea how I laugh every time that a commercial comes up. Explain it again with those nuggies. That's amazing. Anyways, we're getting too distracted with the food talk. We're getting too distracted. Let's zero in again on the topic here at hand. And let's talk about depth. Other moving pieces here. Izzy Mukwamu, we've talked a lot about him and how he's a versatile defensive back that can play safety, but can also play corner. He was shoved into the nickel position last year during the playoffs and played a heck of a football game against Chris Godwin and the Tampa Bay Bucks. So could he be involved in this whole thing one way or another? I think not if Jordan Lewis is playing at a high level. I think that's plan A. Plan B, I wonder if we're going to see something of Izzy Mukwamu with this circumstance, with this current circumstance. So Izzy Mukwamu could be a moving piece. Then somebody mentioned Eric Scott Jr., and obviously that's where your mind can also go. I think he's probably not ready. I think that's not what you want at this point. I don't think that's why the Cowboys drafted him in the 6th round. And maybe we would have said something similar about Bland last year, right? And he was a day 3 surprise. But now the Cowboys need to maneuver a little bit here. If with their roster, right? You're gonna remove Diggs basically, and you're gonna eventually call up Goodwin. So I mean, I don't know how they're exactly gonna go again about this, but after week 3, expect Goodwin on the roster because he is being called up from the practice squad. So you're gonna be right back at 53. You're gonna be right back at 53. But you're still gonna have one less cornerback that actually plays defense, if that makes sense. And I think that's where Mukwamu matters. Because suddenly Mukwamu is the guy that could be that next man up at corner. But then you got to wonder, what does that mean for the inactives players? Because are you going to walk into Sunday with 6 active safeties and for active cornerbacks, I guess. Maybe that's a discussion that is worth diving into a different day. But there's going to be some roster maneuvering here that it's going to be pretty intriguing. But overall, the roster spot that Diggs is going to open, I believe, is likely going to be taken by Goodwin because he's going to be a part of this team. He's definitely going to be a part of this team after the call ups, and which will be this Sunday. Anyways, let's see here. I don't see Eric Scott being a big part of this story after the Trevon Diggs injury, though. I will say that. He's been a healthy scratch for 2 consecutive weeks. I'm guessing he will be for a third one, but we'll see. And now you got to get into the other bad news that the Cowboys received today. We've talked about Trevon Diggs. Maybe we can revisit it next week and talk more about how it'll go. But he was not the only player injured in practice today. And this one flew under the radar because we were all talking about Trevon Diggs and thinking about Trevon Diggs because it's a season-ending injury. But there was another player getting an MRI, and we don't know much about this one. We know that Adam Schefter from ESPN is saying that he will be okay, but Mr. Tyler Biadasz, dealing with a hamstring injury, gets an MRI, and that's about all we know about it. Because he was limited in practice, which, as we've said countless times here on the show, that could mean anything. Could mean that he missed a play. Could mean that he missed every but one play. And now you get into this conversation where, okay, this is what the injury report looked like for the Cowboys. You had none other than Mr. Tyler Biadasz as a limited participant, but you also had Tyler Smith as limited, I believe. You had, oh, snap. It's not updated for some reason. All right, here we go. Tyler Smith was a full participant, actually, today. Chuma Edoga was as well. Brandon Cooks was a full participant. And then you had Jaron Kearse and Zach Martin as DNPs. Zach Martin is, by some people, expected to play, according to some insiders. So now you get into this conversation where, okay, Tyler Smith is back. Let's assume that for now. Let's also be optimistic here. And for now, let's think that Zach Martin is going to play. As hasn't practiced. People are saying that he's expected to, but he has not practiced yet. So that's a concern. But say that they're resting him. Let's assume that for a second here. Tyler Biadasz, dealing with a hamstring injury suffered on Thursday, puts him in question for Sunday. He might be okay, as Adam Schefter is reporting, but what does that mean for Sunday? Because the Cowboys are playing a game in week 3, and you don't really have a backup center. You kind of do, but you don't exactly. It would be Brock Hoffman, who is on the practice squad and has been called up twice now. I'm assuming it would be Hoffman. It might be Sean Harlow, who is also on the practice squad and who is a center too. So it might be one of those two. I'm guessing Hoffman because he's been with the team and because it's the guy that the Cowboys have been calling up for game days at this moment. And by the way, Hoffman is an interesting piece of this conversation because if you walk into week 4 without him on the roster, you cannot elevate him anymore. And maybe the Cowboys believe that some of their guys are going to be able to play different positions, but center in particular is quite difficult. Hoffman, though, played center when he was in college. We know all about that. He could be the replacement, but he is unlikely to be a fun replacement, right? You don't want the practice squad guy getting the reps at center. So Tyler Biadasz is a concern. Obviously, Friday, we're going to get the final injury report, but the real insight we're going to get on Saturday. The Cowboys do not really practice on Friday. As we know, Saturday is a day where we do get some updates. And it's also the day where we get practice squad elevation. So we kind of get some confirmations here and there. If Tyler Smith and Chuma are both ready to go, do the Cowboys say, you know what, we're going to elevate Brock Hoffman because of the center position? Then that could tip their hand a little bit. But if Brock Hoffman isn't elevated, then I guess that could mean that he's good to go, that Tyler Biadasz is good to go for Sunday. But we'll see. We'll have to wait until Saturday for those news because that's when the practice squad elevations are announced. In the meantime, though, we just have to wait and see. It's a good thing that the Cowboys play the Cardinals in week 3, who are a team that really does not have the talent to match up versus the Cowboys. It is the NFL, and injuries can derail a game pretty quickly. But still, even with those absences, potential absences, the Cowboys should win this one. And I know that it's easy to say that right now, and on the field with a backup center, you could be struggling. But even if Tyler Viotish does not play the game, the Cowboys are still going to be heavily favored for this one. Cowboys game on Saturday, by the way, and we can close out the show with some thoughts on it and my betting the Cowboys segment. We are 2-0 for the year, 13-4 last year. So we are on a roll still. This week has been one of the toughest ones in recent memory, but I've got my bet. I'm ready to lose it, though. But this is a game where it's more about the Cowboys than it's about how they match up against the Cardinals, in my opinion. It's about the Cowboys executing in the red zone. It's about the Cowboys not getting penalty flags. It's about the Cowboys. I wonder about how they're going to approach this game in general. One observation from their stats, and I'm not going to panic or anything like that. And I'm telling you before I give you the stats, do not worry about this because game script and weather has been a big part of it. But the Cowboys are the 21st offense in the NFL in EPA per play in early down. So first and second down. They played some conservative football here and there. I wonder how much of that is game script related again, because you're playing these games where you're getting the lead and then you are just controlling the football. I want to see when the Cowboys are really involved in a tight game. How often are they throwing the ball? How aggressive are they in first and second down? I don't think we'll see that on Sunday, but still something to be in the lookout for regardless. How they fare in the red zone, they have scored on 50% of their red zone trips, which is far from great. It is actually 21st in the NFL after 2 weeks of football. You want to see them creep back up in those rankings. They were number 1 in the NFL in 2022, but you just want to see them get it rolling, right? Get it rolling and get it rolling. Something else that I'll say is Cowboys, this is a crazy stat. I couldn't believe it. You tell me if you believe it. Cowboys have given the ball away 0 times in the 2023 season so far. That's a feat. That's definitely something to celebrate. But they're one of 5 teams in the NFL that have not given the ball away through 2 weeks of the season. So it's rare, but it's also not super rare. So you know that this happens in the NFL often, right? 5 teams with no giveaways. It's not an uncommon or epic achievement. But franchise history-wise, it is a first. 64 years of Dallas Cowboys football. And the Cowboys in 2023, for the first time ever, have not given the ball away 2 weeks into the year. I thought that was pretty interesting. It blew my mind. Like, I couldn't believe that in 64 years that hadn't happened before. Again, for context, 5 teams in the NFL right now are able to brag about that. So I thought it was interesting. But still, I'm going to say it's about building on that trend too, because the Cowboys have had some lucky breaks here and there. Dak Prescott threw a turnover-worthy throw versus the Jets. Should have been a pick from Sauce Gardner. Should have taken it to the end zone. Should have been a touchdown for the Jets. Wasn't in the right space, though, for some reason. Sauce was. Tyler Viotish recovered 2 fumbles in the first 2 weeks of the year. The CeeDee Lamb one, 30-something yards downfield. And then the one with Tony Pollard versus the Giants near the end zone. So there have been some lucky breaks. You want to see them build on that. You want to see them control the football in that way. But I also would love to see more aggression from the Cowboys offense in early downs. If they're going to make us wait, I'm fine with it. But I personally would love to see it. Now, again, we're not going to dive too deep into the matchups this week. We were going to do it today. But definitely we had to prioritize the Trevon Diggs stuff. Matchup wise, man, offensive line for the Cardinals is struggling. I think we're going to see more of the same in the pass rush department. Joshua Dobbs has not thrown a pick so far this year, and many people are talking about it. He's thrown 4 turnover-worthy passes, though. He's been a little bit off target. He does get under pressure a lot. So it's gonna be a tough game, I believe, for the Cardinals. So this is the perfect transition to betting the Cowboys. The betting spread is at 12 and a half. Let me know in the chat. What do you think about that number? Do you think the Cowboys cover or not cover? Let me know in the chat. Now, I'll tell you right now that the Cowboys betting spread has not moved an inch after the Trevon Diggs injury, which is not really a surprise. Betting markets tend to not overreact to, I don't want to say minor injuries because it's certainly not minor, but it tends to not overreact to a cornerback being injured. Like even a QB will move the betting spread just like 3 points or something for context. Toxic Tom says cover. Fidencia says they will cover. Tommy915 goes with cover. Tony says cover. Peter Rizzo goes with cover. Repping Cowboys for Life covers. Katharina covers. A lot of covers today in the chat. Let me see if I can find this number really quickly here. Let me share with you this. 85% of the bets, all right? 85% of the bets are on the Cowboys this weekend. That's a no-no for me. I don't feel too comfortable betting that type of numbers. It's the highest number in the game. It's the highest there is. That doesn't mean that, Vegas is tricking everybody or something like that. I don't mean it that way. Because I don't think that the games are fixed and stuff. But I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of betting those type of spreads. Nah. So I'm not going to touch the betting spread because I'm also not going to respect the Cardinals and take the points. Because I do think ultimately that Dallas will win by more than 12 and a half. But I'm going to do and Toxic says, Mo, using emotions to bet isn't wise. But that's exactly what I'm trying to fight with these type of decisions. Like, I don't want to say, oh, man, Cowboys are definitely going to cover. Cardinals suck, blah, blah, blah. This is my way of fighting my own emotions, actually. Because I agree with Toxic. I don't use my emotions to bet. I'm going to go with the under. Under 43 points for the entire game. 43 points is where the betting spread is at. Not betting spread, excuse me. The betting total is at. I'm going with the under 43. It's definitely a low number. 43 is one of the most important numbers that you can know in the NFL space. But I'm going to go with the under because if the Cowboys get ahead early, I think they're not going to put their foot on the Cardinals' neck. I think they're going to take it easy. I think they're going to control the football. They're going to play at a slow pace, and they're going to take it easy, right? They might even bench some of their starters if this is an ugly game in the fourth quarter or something like that. So I think that the Cowboys are going to manage an early lead like that. There are some downsides to my bet and some risks that I'm willing to live with. And that is they could really blow out the Cardinals in a maybe like a 45-0 way, right? It could be a game like that. But I like my chances in this sense. I don't think that the Cardinals are scoring a whole lot. So I would have considered the team total under for the Cardinals as well. But I just feel better with the 43 because the team total under for the Cardinals would really hinge on maybe like 2 plays. And I don't like that. So I'm going to take the under. I think that the Cowboys do win by more than 12 and a half. But I feel better taking the total on this one. I'm going to go with something like I want to say something like 35-3. I don't want to say that the Cowboys are going to allow 3 points by the Cardinals because that would be pretty arrogant. But yeah, something like that. Maybe like another 30-10, like the one that we just had versus the Jets. And I know it's different, but yeah, I think that the Cowboys are going to want to control the football. I think they're going to play at a slow pace. I think that if you're the Cardinals, that's also what you want to do. You want to run the football as much as you can. And maybe even if you go down, you're still going to want to insist on the run game for a while, though. So, yeah, I'm going with the Cowboys, Cardinals under 43-0. Let's see what you guys have to say here in the chat. 30-3, says Tony. I just got a gut feeling. That would mean I cashed the under. I like it. Winning by 17 points, bro, says Kevin Smith. Would love that, of course. Nick says Cowboys 37. Catherine says, we got this for sure, guys, but by 10 at least, if not more. Let's see here. 36, and that's it. A lot of field goals. They were practicing on grass from what I heard, says Jason. So a lot of comments here about the turf and grass thing with the injury and all of that. So yeah, man, just recapping all of this show tonight. Trevon Diggs injury hurts, and it is going to be a major impact. They're not going to bring Anthony Brown back. Marcus is mentioning it in the chat. I know that James Slater reported that it's not happening. So wouldn't have make a lot of sense, and it doesn't seem like the Cowboys think so either. So don't worry about that. It's going to be Jordan Lewis at nickel, Daron Bland on the outside, and Stefan Gilmore opposite of them. And you know what? That's a pretty decent group of cornerbacks. It's not the cornerback group that, had us spoiled. Let's say it. We were spoiled with Gilmore and Diggs. Wait. Man, that's what frustrates me. You see? What frustrates me is not that I'm worried about the Cowboys' pass defense not being one of the top ones anymore. I still think they are going to be one of the top ones, and I still think they might be the top one, even without Trevon. But with Trevon and Gilmore in there, that was such an overpowered group of corners that I love, and it sucks. It sucks that he's not going to be around for this year. So we'll see. We'll see, ladies and gentlemen. Do me a favor. Hit the like button for me. Share the show, and I'll see you on Sunday night, 8 p.m. Central. So I hope that you guys enjoy your weekend. How is it already Thursday? What? Enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you on Sunday after the Cowboys game, 8 p.m. Central. Of course, you're going to have Skywalker Steele and Jesse Holly on the Game Day show. You get Skywalker Steele every Monday through Friday. So subscribe, and I'll see you el día de mañana. Muchísimas gracias. Bye-bye.